There is an irony that some of the most beautiful things that the continent has produced can only be seen in European museums. Most of them are a result of colonial plunder. Now, London's Victoria and Albert Museum is trying to address that and is offering on loan some of Ethiopia's looted treasures. The suggested loaning has set off heated debate. The artifacts have just gone on display in London. Lisa Marie Midstack reports.
Beautifully written manuscripts, a meticulously crafted golden crown, silver jewellery. These are some of the items that were plundered in Ethiopia during the Battle of Magdala in April 1868. The royal and religious treasures were taken when a British expeditionary force laid siege to the mountain fortress of Emperor Tewodros II in what was then Abyssinia. This was in response to the emperor's imprisonment of Europeans. But now, there is some hope for those fighting for the treasures to be returned home.
The history of these items in our collections are legally complicated. The easiest way in order to have these items in Ethiopia is a long-term loan. And we've done that with other items in our collection, with other parts of the world in the past.
The Ethiopian government lodged a formal restitution claim for the Magdala treasures in 2007, which was denied. The suggestion of a loan was first welcomed by the Ethiopian embassy in London, which has partnered with the museum on this exhibition.
Loans are not a new thing. That in itself is a good beginning, a good start for the continued dialogue, discussion and engagement of our two countries regarding cultural artifacts.
There's been contradicting statements on exactly what Ethiopia's position is for the return of the artifacts. The UK ambassador applauded the move to loan the collections to Ethiopia, but the country's culture and tourism minister has rejected the loan and will now intensify efforts to return the treasures back permanently. Calls to return the treasures have been ongoing for years.
I think it's a most welcome proposal. I think barring the possibility of a return of some of these treasures held by institutions in Britain, it would be wonderful if a long-term loan of these treasures to Ethiopia could be arranged. I think it would be greatly welcomed by the Ethiopian people.
In the meantime, an exhibition like this continues to help shine a light on the plight of many countries around the world that are still fighting to have sacred and precious items returned. Lisa Marie Midstack, BBC News, London.
Well, I'm now joined by Toyin Agbetu. He's an anthropologist and activist who took part in a campaign to send the Benin bronzes back from London's British Museum to Nigeria. Thanks for taking time to talk to us on Focus on Africa. So let's just get to the point. The big debate here is the suggestion that these artifacts should be loaned or can be loaned to Ethiopia. And people are saying, why not just permanently return them? Is that a sound argument?
I think the first thing we've got to recognise that this whole idea about stolen properties being loaned is a misnomer. If you steal something, if you have something that's stolen, you can't own it and you can't loan it. So being in possession of something does not make you the rightful owner. So of course these items should be returned home permanently. But
then why then do museums then not return items such as these?
Well, I think we're seeing across the UK movements like decolonising the curriculum which universities are taking place, but we haven't seen a similar movement across museums, decolonising the museums. They keep using this term about how difficult it is to deaccession their items and how they don't have the full provenance, so they don't have the knowledge of how to deaccession these properties. Museums really are clinging on to this old colonial idea of power, because they did try some time ago to do what they call digital or virtual repatriation. This is where they took photographs and constructed 3D models and then sent them to Africa and said, look, there's a photograph of your artifacts. I think they had the right idea, just it was the wrong way round. What they should be doing is sending back the artifacts, because some of those artifacts are not just meant for display cases. Some of those are spiritual possessions, spiritual objects, some of them are very political. And then what they can do, and the technology is there, you have 3D printing, you have many different manufacturing skills.
But what leverage do countries have really on such matters? I mean, if Ethiopia says today, look, we are collaborating with the museum and we have a display in London, and then suddenly the country's minister, cultural minister says, look, no, out of pressure, you know, we are not going to take this? What leverage does Ethiopia, for instance, have? What can they do?
Well, Ethiopia is the moral owner of these projects. In fact, the people of Ethiopia are the moral owners of these projects. So from an activist point of view, they'll continue to put pressure on to actually take away the legitimacy or delegitimize the museums. And we saw this with the Elgin marbles and what happened in Greece, where they actually went to the extent of building a museum for them. But when it comes down to the idea of cultural exchange, this is something come forward. I'm not opposed to the idea of us learning from each other's cultures. I'm an anthropologist.
Yes, because there are people who actually argue that, you know, museums are a place where you can actually exhibit globally anything from the global scene.
Yes, you can. Yes, and you can have websites to do that with our artifacts. And artifacts, physical artifacts, go back. Like I said, you know, we've got to get rid of this idea, and this is something the museums do. Get rid of this colonial mindset that actually owning the original gives them some sense of entitlement to that, some sense of power. The reality of the situation is that they can actually deaccession them. In fact, if they want to have the moral fudge of saying they are permanently loaning it back, which some museums, I think the Smithsonian is doing this, if they're permanently loaning it back, African nations can say, okay, if that's what you want to call it, as long as it's permanent, that's fine. But the reality is it must go back.
All right, Toyin, very interesting thoughts to chew on. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us on Focus on Africa. Thank you.